Hello, and welcome to Never Is Funny, the show where I talk to funny people and hope to God they talk back. Now, this episode, I've got Nick Schuller for you. He's a deadpan stand-up comedian with his fringe show Still Dry White, because he's dry and white. And still those things, I guess. He isn't wet or only temporarily Caucasian. He's funny, which is good, and he clearly has a solid grasp on his own comedy and what he wants to do with it. I'm always in admiration of self-assured comedians. But he has a right to be self-assured. He's good at what he does. Don't believe me? Well, A, that's really, really rude, but B, have a listen for yourself.
Welcome back to the show, where I talk to comedians in the know. That's right. It's Never As Funny. It's Never As Funny. The show is called Never As Funny. It's the name of the show, by the way. Never As Funny. That's the gist of it. The name. The show's called Never. This is like the title music. It's called Never As Funny. All right.
Welcome back to Never Is Funny, everybody. This time I got on Nick Schuller, an Australian comedian, but as you've just informed me, it's semi-fraudulent because you're really from the UK. I can't believe you do this to me.
Yeah, I don't know about really from the UK, but I was born
okay.
in the UK and then kind of lived there till I was about 12.
I see. Are your family from UK or are they Australian?
So my dad's British, mum is Australian.
Okay, cool. But yeah, other than your birthplace, I feel like I'm checking papers or something. But yeah, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
People know you're a comedian as far as that.
So yeah, my name is Nick Schuller. I'm a Australian/English comedian based in Melbourne. I'm about to return to the UK for the Edinburgh Fringe, which kicks off in a week, basically. Yeah, which I'm very excited for. I'm doing 2 shows every day for the whole month of Fringe, which is going to be so much comedy. Arguably too much comedy. But it should be heaps fun.
Yeah, brilliant. I looked up. I didn't realize you're doing the second show until I looked you up before the recording. And yeah, so you're doing your stand-up, Still Dry White, and then I think, is the other one with a couple of other guys called Two Wongs and a White?
Yeah, Two Wongs and a White is the show. So it's me and 2 other Australian comedians from Sydney doing like a split bill show, so like 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Each, which will be, good fun.
Have you done the Fringe before?
No, first time coming to Edinburgh.
Oh, right. Well, how are you feeling about it?
Nervous and excited, I think.
I
feel like it's going to be like nothing I've experienced before. Like I've done plenty of festivals and Fringe festivals here in Australia, but Edinburgh, I think, is like the mecca.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to see what it's like. It seems like, I don't know, it seems like there's nothing else like it in the world where there are just shows happening all the time, everywhere, for an entire month. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but I'm very excited.
Oh, definitely. I kind of find it difficult to wrap my head around how big it is sometimes. It's something like, I think it might be the biggest event of its kind in the world or something. And like living in the UK, it seems hard for me to square the fact that one of the biggest events in the world can be in the UK.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, I think it is the biggest arts festival in the entire world, which is pretty nuts.
That is nuts, yeah. I mean, in terms of doing 2 shows every day for, well, almost a month for the whole festival. Have you done that level of back-to-back before with performing?
No, never. So like I said, I've done like various festivals here in Australia, but we don't really have anything quite on the same scale. So like the next biggest festival that we have, well, there's 2. There's the Melbourne International Comedy Festival and there's the Adelaide Fringe Festival, both of which run for a month, but they're not quite the same as Edinburgh in that the Adelaide Fringe Festival, people tend not to do like the whole month. They'll go for like a week or 2 weeks and do a shorter run. And then in Melbourne, people will do like a whole month of shows, but it just doesn't quite have the same feel as Edinburgh. And I've never done the whole month in Melbourne. I've only done 2-week runs. So this is the first time I'm doing it's like 25 shows or something.
Damn, yeah.
In Edinburgh.
What's the accessibility like for those festivals in terms of, because I've spoken to quite a few comedians from the States, and a couple of them have said similar things about that it doesn't have quite the same framework for, like here at the Fringe, you can, I mean, money, bearing that in mind, you can essentially do like a solo show, whoever you are, or you can, like I went up at university with just a sketch troupe, and I'd started doing comedy like, I don't know, 6 months prior to that.
Yeah.
And when I was speaking to stand-ups in the US, they were saying that unless you already have like a weight of celebrityness behind you, I guess, at least some stage of it, you can't really jump to that. What's it like in Australia with that, with doing shows at Melbourne or Adelaide?
I think it's kind of similar, like particularly for international acts. Like if you don't have your own audience or a following, it is, I think, difficult to come to Melbourne or Adelaide and sell tickets. Whereas Edinburgh, it seems like the kind of essence of the festival is that like audience members are there to see whatever, and so you can take a show and no one can know who you are, but you'll still get people on seats. Whereas like for festivals here, that's not as much the case, and like it's difficult for international acts unless you do have a profile to kind of come and do a festival run out here.
Yeah, definitely. What was your progression like then? From like, I mean, it's the very basic, how'd you get into comedy question? But like, yeah, so obviously you are able to do that now, to do shows at Melbourne. And I think I saw that you'd won an award at, was it might have been Melbourne or Adelaide?
Yeah, so I kind of got chosen by the Melbourne Comedy Festival to be part of a show they do each year called Comedy Zone. And it's like a lineup show that the Comedy Festival does of like the 5 best young comedians in the country each year. And so people like Hannah Gadsby and Ronnie Chang have done it in the past.
Oh, right.
And so I was chosen to do that in 2022. And like it was awesome. It was great. In fact, one of the guys that I'm doing the split bill show in Edinburgh with was also in Comedy Zone back in 2022, Patrick Galamko. And that, it was a phenomenal opportunity and just like a great way to do a festival, because basically it's just a lineup show. So like a host and 4 comics doing 10 minutes for the whole month, and it's managed and produced by the Comedy Festival. So they like take care of marketing and they make sure there's an audience there. So as a comedian, it's the dream, because you just rock up and do 10 minutes each night to a nice crowd. It was really fun. But that was kind of my stepping stone into the festival, because like I now have a working relationship with the festival, and so I get to do other gigs that they run and organize, which is a real privilege.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to ask about that, if that was like a big jump up for you. How long have you been doing stand-up?
So I started properly at the start of 2018, so like six odd years now. Yeah.
Was it like sorry, my mind went blank because I was trying to subtract 2018 from 2024 in my mind. Like, how did you get into it? Was it like a university thing? Has it been something you've wanted to do for a while, or?
I'd always loved watching stand-up as a kid and through my teen years, but I was never like, I hated drama at school. I hated performing. I was a very shy kid. It was never something that I'd like contemplated. And then when I was at university, like I started to recognize that I could make people laugh, and that felt good for me in a kind of narcissistic way. And then when I finished uni, I was like in between jobs and sort of looking for something to do. And so I entered, it's called Raw Comedy here, which is like the equivalent of So You Think You're Funny in the UK, which is like an open mic, national open mic competition. Again, it's organized by the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. But yeah, it's like the biggest open mic competition that's designed to like get people in to stand up and find new up and coming comedians. And so I entered that competition, did my first ever gig as part of that comp.
Wow.
And was terrible. It was so bad. I sucked. It was horrible. Yeah. I was so nervous. Yeah, it was just not good. It was like 5 minutes, but I just sucked. It was terrible. So bad that I didn't do comedy again for an entire year after that. So I took a year off. I'd also like started another job, so I was focusing on that, not really thinking about stand up. And then, so that first gig was at the start of 2017. And then I got to the end of 2017. I had like some time off work. It was Christmas, had a bit of downtime and started thinking about comedy again. And then I went back and did another open mic at the very start of 2018 and then just got hooked. After that, it was just, kept going back.
Yeah, that's right. What was the kind of venues that, I mean, were these at like pubs?
Yeah, it's just like rooms above pubs, basically.
That's right. What made you, I mean, you said you liked doing it, you had the bad experience and left, and then came back. What was your big draw to it? Was it just the feeling, I mean, you said narcissistic, but I think everyone who does this is a little bit. Yeah. Was it just the feeling of laughing? I mean, what are your kind of memories of the early days of going there and falling more into it?
Yeah, I think like it's definitely addictive in a sense. Like the feeling that you get when you come off stage and you've had a really good set is, it's like nothing else, and it is incredibly addictive. And I find that I'll try and chase that feeling, even if it means doing it and not getting that feeling heaps of times and doing shit gigs. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's addictive, that feeling.
How much is your kind of way of doing it change? So, because like looking at your new show and kind of descriptions of previous shows you've done, your style has been described, I think, by yourself as well, as like very deadpan, and I can think of a secondary word, but it's like deadpan. Yeah. Is that like a persona that you've kind of crafted over the time you've been doing it, or is that just who you are and you've always kind of done that?
No, it's definitely developed over time. So like when I first started performing, I had a much more kind of, I guess, typical style, kind of more animated, more observational storytelling, like standard kind of stand-up performing style. And then during the pandemic, when like couldn't gig, I was like talking to some more experienced comics and getting like some feedback on my performance style. And one of them suggested leaving the mic in the stand, because like I would, I'm going to take the mic out and walk around, and he was like, that doesn't really add anything to your performance. It's just kind of distracting. So it was like, firstly, leave the mic in the stand, and secondly, try and deliver your jokes with less emotion and energy, and like lean into kind of deadpan dry style and see how it feels, see if it works. And so like my first gig back after lockdowns lifted and we were able to get back to gigging, I tried it and it just felt natural. It felt like it suited me, and it worked well as well. It got better responses from the audience. And so that would have been like 2021 probably. So I'd been performing for like 2 or 3 years before shifting into a more like deadpan style. And then since then, I've really been trying to take all the emotion and energy out of my performance.
That's great. I mean, has that changed how you like write or like put your sets together at all? Have you kind of changed it to match the new style?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think I have changed my writing to match the style, but I think the style also naturally suits the way that I write jokes. So it's a bit of a kind of symbiotic relationship. But yeah, like I will try and write like as efficiently as possible, because like performing deadpan comedy, like you don't use movement, emotion, voices, anything like that. It's like just paired back to the writing, and so the writing has to be really, really tight and efficient. And so I really try and focus my writing on like making jokes as economical as they possibly can be.
Right, that makes sense. Oh, I hear a cat. That's great.
Yeah, that's my cat. Carrying on.
That's brilliant. If they hop up, have them say hello.
He might.
Love cats. But yeah, I mean, what's your getting it efficient makes sense. I mean, are you quite a writerly comic then when it comes to stand-up? Do you have a full script, or is it more bullet points?
It's definitely more like the full script style, which again, I think that's just kind of the way my brain works outside of comedy too. Like I've always kind of learned like that. But yeah, that is how I treat comedy as well. But sometimes it does feel a bit restrictive if like I go into a set and like I have, this is exactly what I'm going to say. And so in the last 6 months or so, I've been trying to loosen it up a bit and like move away from knowing exactly what I'm going to say in a set and trying to kind of read an audience or just kind of relax a bit and play around a bit more.
Okay, yeah. I was going to ask about that because, I mean, again, another one of the standard questions you ask comedians, but how much improvisationality is there to your show? Like, do you kind of mix up how you deliver things? Do you respond to the audience much?
There's definitely a bit, and like I really like those parts of the show because I think they contrast well to the kind of well-crafted, well-scripted jokes. And I think also like for an audience, it's kind of boring if I'm just droning on in a monotone for 50 minutes. Like it's good to have a bit of contrast where there's stuff that either is or seems improvised. And so yeah, like in the show Still Dry White, there are parts where I chat to the crowd and like do crowd work or like have bits that have space in them to improvise and kind of shape them around that particular audience or what's happening in the room at that particular time.
Okay, yeah. Are there any particular favorite moments of yours of that type of thing that's happened?
I did Still Dry White at the Melbourne Comedy Festival this year, and my wife had told her colleagues that I was doing the show, and so some of them came to the show during the run, and she told me that one of them was coming on. I think it may have been the last night of the show, and I was like having a chat to the crowd that night. I'd completely forgotten, and I was having a chat to some people in the front row, and I was asking them what they do, and they're like, oh, I'm a teacher. My wife is a teacher, and they're like, I'm a Mandarin teacher, and my wife 3 weeks previous had been like, oh, the Mandarin teacher from high school is coming to your show, and I'd completely forgotten. And then as I was talking to them, I remembered that this is my wife's colleague and her husband that I was chatting to, which did make the crowd work difficult from that point on, because like you don't want to, I don't know, roast your wife's colleague that you've never met before on stage. You like, I don't want to ruin her career. But they were very nice and friendly, and it turned out to be quite a nice chat. And it was very nice that they'd come to the show. But it could have gone quite poorly.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, have you had that happen with crowd work in the past? Have you had reaching out to an audience member and realizing that you're getting nothing or that they're not really connecting with you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens all the time. Like some people just don't want to talk to you, which is totally fine. I feel like in general, Australian crowds are quite nice and well behaved, and like generally people aren't like, you don't really get many genuine mean or disruptive heckles, and like if you try and engage and talk to people in a nice and reasonable way, generally they kind of understand that that's what you're doing and will give you something. Like they'll just engage in the conversation but not try and either withdraw completely or be just like fuck it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you expect it to, I mean, the improvisations of crowd work as well, like when you're going to Edinburgh and doing the show, do you expect it to change much over the course of the Fringe to kind of adapt it, or is it pretty set in stone?
I think it'll change a bit. There are like a number of jokes that have cultural references or like context to them that I'm not sure will make sense to a UK audience. Like they're somewhat Australian specific, and like I'm quite conscious of that, and so I've tried to, like, if there are specific references, I'll try and change those. But it's like there are a few jokes that like the broader context of the joke kind of needs a bit of Australian background knowledge, which just might not work. But it's also like I had no idea until I get there and start doing them whether people there are going to understand them or not. And so like I may have to tweak those or take them out completely if they're not working. Yeah, so I think the show will change a bit over time. Like I said before, it is like relatively structured and like has a pretty sturdy outline, but there is space in there to play around. And yeah, I'm also kind of more so in the split bill show, kind of hoping to use it as an opportunity to work up material and try stuff and develop stuff. So like I'm not just going to be doing the same thing every night for a month, because I think I'd lose my mind.
Yeah, with the split bill show, is it, you said it was like a running order of each of you doing 15 minutes. Is that like, are you using pieces from your main set, or is it a completely different thing that you put together?
It'll be like, there'll be definitely overlap. Yeah, like I said, the split bill I think is not less pressure, but like a bit less formal, I guess. Like it's more of a lineup show. There's variety. Basically, I think if one of us bombs for 15 minutes, there are two other people who can do well, so it doesn't
mop it up. Yeah,
you're not like stuck watching one person die for an hour. But I think, yeah, it's just a bit more relaxed.
Plus it makes you look a little better, so there's always that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like more of an opportunity to, I don't know, play around, work on newer stuff. Like, yeah, it's just a lower pressure environment. And I think it's like that for the audience too, where like they know that there are three comics. Like if they don't like one person, they know that there's someone else coming on in 10 minutes.
Right.
Whereas for the solo show, it's like, it's just you. If they don't like you, that sucks. You're the only one.
Oh, definitely. I've had that with audience members before as well, where they start to get, not a lot, but from, especially when we went to Fringe as like a sketch troupe, performing a lot night to night, every so often there'd be, and I usually found it was like an older guy, and they would not be enjoying it, which is fine. Like obviously nobody's gonna enjoy everything, and also low key, we were a uni sketch troupe, it wasn't that good. But you get this vibe from them that they're really angry at you that they're there. And it's like, I'm sorry, but I know you did pay a small ticket fee to be here, but you can leave. You don't.
Yeah, you could just go. Yeah. Like, I don't understand the mindset of audiences sometimes where, like, you've paid to come and see a gig, or you've walked into a free show or whatever. Like, surely you would be open-minded. You're not just going to be like, oh, this is shit. I'm going to sit there with my arms crossed and hate it. Like, I don't know, but some people, that is their mindset. In fact, I was doing a gig last night where there was a woman sitting in the second row, just like arms crossed, completely negative body language. And I spoke to her. I was like, it looks like you're having the worst time. And she wasn't. She was quite enjoying it. Just, that's how she's sitting. So I guess it's sometimes you don't necessarily, like, people are actually enjoying the show. They just don't.
Yeah, definitely.
Show it visibly.
Which is good. I mean, it sounds like you handle it in a good way. You definitely don't want to have something that can go on the aggressive and be like, what's wrong with you, man? What's your problem? If they turn out to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's never going to make the situation better if someone's not having a good time. And you're like, why are you not having a good time?
But, okay, so we're approaching the middle section of the show, where I'm going to use a song of your choice in the break. Is there a particular song you'd like me to go with? Yeah,
I think I will request the house music that I'm using at the start of my show in Edinburgh, which is a song called Love a Man by Gojo.
Okay.
Who I think is an Australian performer. But it's like nice, upbeat, fun, set a mood for a fun show type of song.
Excellent. Okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You saying that has only just made me twig that would be a good thing to ask guests what music they're using, because only just occurred to me that, oh yeah, everyone does that, so that's a good shout for music choice.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, okay, Lover Man by Gojo. What was your, was it just that you generally like the song? Is there any specific way you chose it for house music?
A, I just like the song, but B, I think like it's upbeat, it's poppy, it's fun, it's light. Like I think the little like intangible things about a gig make a huge difference, like the house music when you walk in, like the difference between walking into like a dead silent room versus a room with like fun, loud music. You might not think that makes a huge difference to an audience, but it really, really does. All those little things like set the tone of like, oh, this is an actual performance, and like it subconsciously like tweaks the audience to being like, oh, this is a real thing that's might be good. Whereas if you come into like a cold room, you're setting yourself up to fail. So yeah, I think like the house music is very important. I lived in London briefly in 2020, and there was a guy who ran various gigs that I did back then, and before the gigs he would constantly on loop play Happy by Pharrell Williams on like volume 11, and it was great because like songs like that are perfect, like they're fun, like they just make you relax a bit. And
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it just makes the gig go better. And so like I've tried to replicate that doing my own shows.
Great. Okay, well, that'll warm everybody up for the second half, I guess. And here that comes. Welcome to my Casa de Middle section. That's Spanish for House of the Middle section, and that's what this is. So what? I know a little Espanol, it's no big deal. Nick has requested the song Lover Man by Gojo, which I can respect. I'm a lover man myself. Just ask my girlfriend. Actually, no, don't do that. She won't like that. I'll be in trouble. I'm serious, don't do that. Yeah, don't. Okay, yeah, the song, you know the drill? Nick delivers deadpan one-liners. Well, sorry, Nick, but I'm about to beat you at your own game. In between the lines of this song, I'm going to deliver my own one-liners, and they are really funny. I've been on the move. I'm running as fast as I can. Running fast? Well, duh. You can't run slow. Ain't got no money. Ain't got no plan. That's like me on a Monday. Because right now I'm technically unemployed, so I'm not financially very stable, and I don't have kind of a consistent plan for my future. Spare me your loving. Skip the romance. Skip the romance? I don't think so. I really like it when people love me. It makes me feel held. 'Cause girl, you know I ain't your lover, man. I wish I felt more held sometimes, you know? I ain't your lover, man. Sometimes it just gets kind of lonely, you know. Even when you know you are loved, you can still feel lonely. Lover, man? I hardly know her. Welcome back, everybody. I hope Lover Man got you hyped up. I was trying to look up the song in the break, and it turns out there's a billion songs all called Lover Man, and I couldn't remember what the artist was.
It's Gojo.
Gojo, okay. But speaking of love and men, you're a man, I'm sure you said you got a wife. You must be, I hope you're in love. That'd be good.
I like that transition.
Thank you. Working on my segues. But I want to ask you a bit more about your show, obviously. The first thing that came to mind was in the poster for it, you're holding a bottle that says Nick Schuller, Still Dry White, the name of your show on it. And I found a review somewhere that says it's a nod to Schuller's brilliant marketing tool and his face-branded bottles. By the way, these are genuine wines from South Australia. So, what's the deal with that? It's real wine.
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, it won't be there for Edinburgh because I don't have a way of transporting all this wine to Scotland.
Right.
But when I did the show in Melbourne earlier this year, I got like a marketing grant from the comedy festival and used it to buy like 100 bottles of white wine, and then I like got custom wine bottle labels with the show poster on them that I put on the bottles, and then I just gave them away each night at the show.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so I had like a few bottles on the stage, and then at the end of the show, I just gave it to the audience. But like 2 days before the show started, the venue that I was in told me that like because of their liquor licensing, I couldn't actually like hand out the bottles of wine in the venue. So like after the show, I had to be like, if you want a bottle of wine, hang around out the front, and then I will come out. We will go out to the front of the venue on the street, and I can give you the wine there. And so like each night I would have like, I don't know, 10 people like following me out onto the street to give them
like a dealer.
3 bottles of wine. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty wild, but it was good fun and like a nice little gimmick. And I still have, I don't know, 12 of the bottles of wine, and they're surprisingly not terrible. I thought, given I bought, I don't know, 100 of them for $700 or something, like 350 pounds, they were like, I don't know, £5 each. Surprisingly not that bad.
Damn, that's brilliant marketing. Hopefully in the future, as your budget increases, if you go back to Edinburgh, I mean, I've been speaking to various comedians who have been coming up with different gimmicks while they're flyering. Yola Lu, I spoke to her recently. She's bringing branded condoms, which is a classic one. It would be excellent if you had enough. You could get someone to stand out on the street and just hand out wine. It'd be a sure way to sell tickets.
Man, that'd be the dream. I'd go see that show for sure.
But yeah, speaking of flyering, will you be flying in Edinburgh?
I will. I hate flying. It's the worst part of comedy. It sucks. And I guess, fortunately, in air quotes, it's not really it is done at festivals here, but it's not, I think, as essential as it is in Edinburgh. So yeah, I will be out there on the street. I've hired someone to help as well. And the guys I'm doing my split bill show with will be flying for that as well. So yeah, I will be out on the street, but I hate it. I hate it so much.
I haven't met anyone who does enjoy it.
Yeah.
What's your pitch when you're flagging people down?
Man, good question. I probably need to spend more time thinking about that. But I think like the pitch for the show in general is like that it's dry, deadpan, stand up, and if you're into that sort of thing, you'll really like the show. That is a difficult pitch to make when there are fucking like people juggling on each other's shoulders and like fire twirling, and you're like, oh, this is cool, but you like a man speaking in a monotone for an hour because that's what I'm doing. Yeah, so it's a bit of a hard sell, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll get out there and see what people respond to.
What's the kind of makeup of what you're talking about? Is it more, I mean, you mentioned you used to be more observational, telling stories, and you kind of moved away from that. Do you have like a through line that you're working through, or is it more kind of joke to joke based?
It's pretty much joke to joke. It's just kind of like, 50 minutes of my best jokes, really. There's no like overarching narrative or theme. I have done shows like that in the past, and it's kind of a hard thing to do as a deadpan comedian, like, because to have that narrative theme, like, it lends itself more naturally to storytelling in like that observational style, whereas like dry deadpan is like you almost like take yourself out of the jokes as much as possible, so it's then hard to kind of weave a story through jokes like that. So yeah, it's basically just an hour of like good solid club jokes back to back.
How long have you been you've been doing previews and things?
So I started doing this show in February at the Adelaide Fringe. Then I took it to Canberra, the Canberra Comedy Festival, and then the run in Melbourne. And so like that was, I guess, technically preview versions of the Edinburgh version of the show. Yeah, but like I've been working, it's kind of like a collaboration of all my best bits from the last couple of years, really. So yeah, the show in Edinburgh is a bit different to the one in Melbourne. But yeah, it's probably 2.5 years worth of material.
You mentioned you'd had to take a couple things out that were more Australian, like contextually. Are there any of those that are especially like, I'm just wondering, are there any of those jokes that you could tell me now that would just I just would not, like, were there any that were really Australian?
There's one I'm concerned about not working that like requires, it's like fairly specific Australian political knowledge. Like, did you know, like last year? Either last year or this year, we had a referendum in Australia about like Indigenous rights. Did you know that?
Oh, I vaguely did.
Yeah, I'm hoping that like vague sense is in enough people's consciousness.
Yeah.
Like I have a joke that references that, and if you don't know that that's what I'm talking about, it will just straight over people's heads.
Yeah, it's tough.
And it's it's not a long joke, but like if you don't get it, you're not going to get it at all. It's not like something you can be like, oh, I could see why this is funny. It's like, what is he talking about?
You don't have the time to do a long political setup explaining the geopolitics of...
Yeah. I mean, I could, but it's also like, so the context is we had this referendum about like giving Indigenous people it's called the voice to Parliament.
Right.
And for various reasons, the country decided not to do that, which is, in my opinion, not a good outcome at all. And so like going into that and explaining that, I feel like will really bring the mood down in the show. But yeah, like I think for that joke in particular, I think enough of it should work without that knowledge that
Right.
I hope be able to keep it in. But I may get 3 days in and this joke might just be bombing and then I'll have to take it out.
Right, yeah. I mean, when you... so it occurs to me, this is a somewhat harsh question for me to ask you. What's the joke that won't work the most? Deliver it to me now. But if you do end up taking that or other things out, do you have like a backlog of things you will replace it with? Or will it just be removed?
Yeah, like I definitely have other material that I can put in that's like older. I guess I like this joke because it's fairly new. Like I only wrote it 6 weeks ago or so and it's been working well here. And so it'd be nice to have it in the show, but if it doesn't work, that's fine. I can sub it out for something else. There's another newer joke that I've been working on lately that I think, in fact, I've only been working on for like a week or two, but it's been going all right. So I think that will definitely go into the show. And then if the other one needs to come out, like that one should make up the time, hopefully. So yeah, I think like I'm in a kind of fortunate position again because this is like my first Edinburgh and I can do any jokes from my back catalogue that like if something is working, I can just take it out and put something back in.
Yeah, definitely. What's your process like for writing jokes? I mean, you mentioned kind of getting them efficient and yeah, I'd be cutting out fluff and things like that. But do you, like, how do they come to you? Do you just kind of sit down and write and they appear?
Yeah, basically, that is
handy.
like my process. I try and write every day if I can. And like that basically involves sitting in front of my computer and writing things and tweaking things. And a lot of the time is spent sitting and trying to think of jokes, which is a difficult and painful process. And often, yeah, it just involves sitting and staring at a blank screen for a while. But I find that like I need to like dedicate the time to do it and be thinking about it. Otherwise, like jokes don't just come to me. Like I really need to be sitting and focusing and thinking specifically about them because that's just how I generate ideas.
Do you have a specific format for them in terms of like, do you stick to like, it's this length and this is the setup here and this is the punchline, it's got to go through that? Or are they more not that, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like a bit of a formula to joke writing to an extent where like broader than just like set up punchline. There's kind of whatever the topic is and then your attitude and then the premise and stuff like that, which can be quite formulaic and is I definitely find useful and like try and slot jokes into that if possible. But I think a lot of it too is just how a particular sentence sounds and like the rhythm of the sentence. And so like those things I think are just as important as like this is the setup, that's the punchline. Like the sentence has to feel natural and flow natural and sound right. And so like I will like try and use the like formulaic structure to an extent, but if that needs to be overridden to make a sentence, make the rhythm of a sentence right or like the length or the flow of a sentence right, then I think like I'll change the structure or format so that it feels natural and flows
right, yeah,
in a more logical way.
What about in terms of linking them together? Because you mentioned they're quite separate. It's not necessarily one strict through line through. Do you think a lot about the order of, I mean, I assume you do, that you don't just lump them all together, but what's your process like for saying, okay, this goes, I don't know, at minute 25, 49 seconds or whatever into your set?
Yeah. I think a lot of that is about like pacing and making sure like if I've got some like big long-winded joke that goes for quite a while, then immediately following that, like I'll probably want to have some sort of short, sharp jokes to balance the pace and like keep people interested and on their toes. So yeah, I'm definitely very conscious of like the set list and the order of the jokes in the show. In terms of like linking them, I think that's where like deadpan and my style are quite useful because like it doesn't necessarily matter if one joke doesn't relate to the next. They can't, like, I think the audience understands that like each joke is a distinct thing, and if there is no logical segue from one to the next, that's fine. There's like, oh, that's what he's talking about now. That said, I do broadly, the show is split into like the first, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes are like me talking about things at school, and that's just a convenient way to like link into different subjects.
Right.
Where like my favorite subject at school was history, and then I have a joke about that, or like I did outdoor ed at school, and then I talk about that. Like it's just an easy way to link things in a somewhat logical way. And then the second half of the show is just about like the link in the second half is about like traveling a lot for gigs, basically, because again, it's like an easy way of just like tying all the jokes to some like central theme. But like the transition from the first half to the second half is there isn't one really. It's just like now I'm talking about traveling a lot for comedy. Like, yeah. So fortunately, like my style lends itself to just being like, now I'm talking about this, now I'm talking about that. Like it doesn't have to have that flow necessarily.
Great, that makes sense. I mean, those like two general connections, school and traveling, did they come out of, they just made sense based on the jokes you had, or did you go into it thinking, this is a show where I'm going to cover this and this?
No, it just sort of emerged naturally as a way to link a number of jokes to make them into a kind of coherent set. I think I had like one joke that was like specifically about being at school, and then the kind of natural development and progression just, I don't know, just developed into like this whole chunk that's the kind of linking device.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So with the Fringe and with like your comedy more in general, how do you see, if at all, because I know if I was asked this question, I'd just be like, I don't know, man. It hasn't happened yet. That's the future. But like, what kind of things do you see in the future of your performing? With the deadpan and things, do you feel like you've found that's your thing and you're going to keep building on it, or do you expect it to kind of evolve a lot more and change more?
No, like I think the deadpan aspect will, like that's definitely my like onstage persona now. But I think I'm like keen to keep developing and working on ways to make it a bit more like relaxed and easygoing without undermining the deadpan persona, because it's kind of hard to do your own solo show fully in deadpan the whole time, because it's very hard to get the audience on board and to get them to like you if you're actively trying not to show any emotion or like engage them. And so it's something that like I've grappled with in the past of like how you, if you're just doing your own show, how you get people on board without like becoming an MC and being like, how are you guys doing, blah 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 blah. So that particularly for Fringe this year, but in general is like something I'm looking to develop, is like starting the shows and getting people on board and introducing them to my style in a way that works and is effective. Yeah, because it can be hard. Like I say, if you just go on and like show no emotion, it's very hard to get people in. But then if you come out big energy and emotion and then swap into deadpan, it doesn't make any sense. Like people get confused and like what is going on?
What happened to him?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you said it's something you plan to work on, but what kinds of stuff might that involve, do you think, for like, what are you thinking of trying out to get that to work?
Yeah, like I find one useful way of doing it is like making a joke right off the top about the space that we're in, if there's something weird about the room, or just like some kind of quick, simple, easy joke that is good so that people instantly trust you, but is also like can be delivered, like is true to the persona as well, so it can be delivered in a kind of relatively understated way. So yeah, like finding things to talk about off the top that are specific to that performance, I think helps. Having early on in the show like built-in periods where I just chat to the crowd and do crowd work, because again, that's a way of relaxing them, and like it just again seems weird if like you come out and just talk for 50 minutes and almost like don't acknowledge that they're
Right.
in the room. So like actually engaging with them, relaxes people and like makes it seem more natural, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Do you stick to your persona when you're doing that then? Do you think about, because I presume when you are practicing or going over your set, which I assume you do, I don't know, maybe you do have a photographic memory, but when like an audience member says something, you respond to it, or you actually choose to go into crowd work, do you think about like, okay, they've said that, so I'm going to respond with this, and I'm going to do it in this way, staying in their persona, or does it just kind of naturally happen?
It definitely just naturally happens, but I definitely also try and stay in the persona. And like part of the persona is like low energy, but also like slow and awkward delivery. Right. And that can be really fun with crowd work if you like deliberately take your time and be awkward about things. It just builds tension.
Yes.
In the room, which is useful. Yeah, so like crowd work is something that can definitely work with the persona. Yeah, so it's something that
okay, cool. Yeah,
I build into the show.
I assume the persona as well, you're doing the same character, for lack of a better word, with things like two Wongs and a White.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Same across both.
What's it like doing, because you said you'd worked with them before, how did that show come about? Deciding to work together and go to Fringe?
Yeah, so it's actually basically the reason that I'm going to Fringe this year. So Jenny and Patrick, who are the other comics, late last year asked me if I wanted to do a split bill show with them. Basically, like they were planning on going to Fringe and were looking for a third person to do a show with. And so they asked me, and like I thought it was too good an opportunity to pass up if like it basically got handed to me on a silver platter. So I was like, yeah, right. Absolutely. And then I figured if I was going to be in Edinburgh, I might as well do the solo as well. So yeah, that's how it came about.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, how are you feeling about, you mentioned being nervous about it, but do you have anything in mind for how you're going to balance doing those two shows back to back, other than going out and drinking copiously every night?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a question. I don't know. It's just going to be a very, very full on month. And like I'm doing spots at other gigs around the place, and the calendar is already filling up a lot. So yeah, it's going to be a big month. And yeah, I'm just going to try and take downtime where I can find it, and try not to lose my mind.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I suppose at least, I mean, there's always that thing of when you're doing stand-up and things, you have to throw yourself into being on stage after a long day or a series of bad events. But I suppose if your character is quite deadpan and low energy, then you do have that to fall back on, which is handy.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have to kind of pretend to be happy all the time if I'm not happy.
But yeah, okay, so we're drawing towards the end of the show. But before we do plugs and things, this is where I'd like to play like a little sample of your work.
Yeah.
So is there anything in particular you'd like me to use?
Yeah, I think I'll send through a clip from a joke that will be in the show. It is about golf and the reasons that I enjoy golf. There's a little version on Instagram. The one on Instagram went sort of viral. I ended up getting booked for a corporate charity golf event off the back of that joke, which paid very well, but was one of the worst gigs I've ever done.
Oh my god.
It was horrible.
I've heard that. I've had another comedian on who'd done a corporate gig. He'd done it quite early on and had the experience of he went there and nobody there seemed to know that he'd been booked or who he was or what he was doing there.
Yeah.
I mean, what about it went bad, if you don't mind me asking?
Firstly, it was at 5 p.m. in like a bar above a golf club, so it was just like broad daylight.
Right.
And like the set itself that I did went fine, but then I had to like host a like charity auction thing afterwards. And I was hosting this auction, and then after each prize, like the sponsor of the prize would come up and say a few words. And after one of the prizes, sponsor came up and he was like, firstly, next year we need to get a new comedian because that was terrible. It was
Oh my
misogynistic. It
God.
was completely inappropriate. If my bosses knew this has happened, I would lose my job. And I was standing there like, what's going on? And then he said this, and then just gave me the mic back, and then I just had to host the rest of the auction after this happened.
Jesus.
And then it was wild. And like when you'll see the clip, because I did the joke that's in the clip, it's like it has sexual references, but it's not
No.
like remotely offensive in any way. Like I could do it at a like clean children's gig almost. And then after the gig, like 20 people who were in the audience came up to me and were like, that guy's fucking insane. Like, we really enjoyed your set. There's nothing wrong with it, which felt kind of nuts. But at the time, I was just like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
That is not, especially because, you know, you're doing the joke that they picked you to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it made no sense.
That's brilliant. Well, that's 1 to 20. So let's find out what people listening think. I didn't think it was misogynistic. Otherwise, I either wouldn't have had you on, or I would have had you on and asked you a lot about that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So yeah, here it goes.
Thank you. I visited my granddad today. Not a fan of political correctness. My granddad. I found it's very easy to annoy people who think political correctness has gone too far. Like recently, I've been going to my local golf club, telling the members that they can't say handicap. They have to say golfing accuracy disorder. They do not like it at all. In fact, they regularly ask if I have a mental golfing accuracy disorder. I like golf, because to win golf, you have to take the fewest shots, which means the better you are at golf, the less time you spend playing golf. That's a nice idea. The better you are at an activity, the less time you spend doing that activity. When you're really good at something, you do it for a very short amount of time. If an activity doesn't last long, it actually means you're really good at the activity. The shorter the activity lasts, the better you are at the activity. If you finish in 3 strokes, you're like the best at the activity. If you finish in 1 stroke, you get a trophy. Like, who cares if you have a small club? Sometimes it's fun to play mini golf, you know? Like, maybe you've been doing the activity with the same partner for like 10 years, and sometimes you get confused and like you were aiming for the green, but you ended up in the bunker, and like sometimes you don't even know the rules of the activity. Like, if I touch someone else's ball, is that cheating? And like, then you think maybe it's a good idea to like open things up, try the activity with other people. So you go out and you find a nice couple, and like they're really good at the activity. Like, they have incredible technique, like phenomenal swingers, and they teach you a lot about yourself, like the fact that you actually quite enjoy playing the back nine, and like you don't know why that's what you like, and you think about it a lot, and like, yeah, you went to an all boys school and you don't think that has anything to do with it, but then again, like maybe it does, right? Like there was that time in year 9 where Damo Stevens, Dak, Tommy Robinson, and everything came off, and it wasn't the worst thing you've ever seen, you know, and like anyway, that's why I like golf.
And it's played. Welcome back, everybody. That was really good. And
That was my misogynistic golf joke.
yeah, I genuinely can't believe you said that. It's really horrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of plugs for your shows, obviously at Edinburgh. But yeah, where and how can people see you there or elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Edinburgh, the 2 shows, my solo show is called Still Dry White. It is on at 8 p.m. every night of the Fringe from the 1st of August till the 25th at East Side in the New Town in Edinburgh. And the split bill, 2 wongs and a white, is on at 3 p.m. every day in the same venue, East Side in the Newtown. You can find me on social media at Nick Schuller. And yeah, otherwise, if you're in Australia, I'm in Melbourne, I'm gigging all the time. Come and see me.
Great. Yeah, and I'll drop all that in the show notes. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've been Patrick. My guest has been Nick Schuller. And Nick won't see you next week. Actually, he might do if you come to the show, because that's next week, which is...
It is, yeah.
Horrifyingly soon.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, you will hear me next week unless something really tragic happens. But I'm glad we had this one first.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the show. You can find the show on Instagram at neverasfunny, all one word, all lowercase. The music used in the intro and outro is There It Is by Kevin MacLeod and Comptech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0. The guest next week is stand-up comedian Pernilla Holland. Go give it a listen when it's here. It's not here yet. Hold your horses.